We used to do that before. What it was they used to push phone and Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 5th council meeting. And for everyone take their seats, that would be appreciated. As a reminder, the meetings are live streamed, recorded, and available on the internet by visiting the Town of Parry Sound website at www.parrysound.ca. I'd like to acknowledge at this time we're on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people under the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850 and the waterways traveled by the Métis of this region. Prior to the open session, council met for a closed meeting. It was moved by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor Borneman. Pursuant to section 239(2) and 3 of the Municipal Act SO 2001 C25 as amended, Council of the Corporation of the Town of Parry Sound moved to a special meeting closed to the public in order to address matters pertaining to E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, potential claim against the municipality related to infrastructure, construction work, potential claim against municipality related to town bylaw enforcement. F, advice that subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, potential claim against municipality related to infrastructure construction work. And K, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied on to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, negotiating infrastructure funding application, negotiating future of West Parry Sound Economic Development Collaborative. Oh, that's not right. Actually, the last part. No, yeah, remember that. As a reminder, okay, there's a deputation scheduled for 8 o'clock. Mr. Carmichael can't be here until then, or online, I'm not sure which, but maybe a mover and seconder for the agenda, please. Councillor McDonald, Councillor McCann. Are there any additions or prioritization to the agenda? No? Okay. The council agenda for November 5th, 2024 be approved as circulated. All in favor? That's carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Nope. Okay. Mover and seconder for the minutes. Councillor Keith and Councillor McCann, that the minutes for the regular council meeting held October 15th, 2024 be approved as circulated. Any discussion or comments on those meetings? Nope. All in favor then? That's carried. Questions of staff? Councillor Keith.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, my question is for Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson, I understood that there was fire training in October time, I believe, about the 23rd for a few days. How did that training go down at the salt dock area and water treatment plant, that area?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we had the ability to get the provincial mobile live fire training unit into town. We had it for 4 days in late October. All the area municipal fire departments were able to take advantage of that resource. It's fantastic for the firefighters. Firefighting has become a very much a young person game, and our crew is equally young, and to be able to get these people experience with live fire, we just don't have the fires, which is a good thing, that we used to have in the community. So a tool like this where we can get into safe smoke and live fire with real heat and practice evolutions that we would on an actual structure fire is invaluable. All the area municipalities were able to take advantage of it. We ourselves here in Parry Sound had a fantastic day down there with almost our entire team, and we're able to gain everyone a great deal of experience. Really like to thank the water department for being able to put us there. There's I'm sure the trainers from the OFM who were there have never had as spectacular a view as they did at our location overlooking Georgian Bay. And you know what? We were able to interact with the public a great deal as well because we have the walkway on both sides and people were still able to utilize those walkways. And I think they were able to get a kick out of it and enjoy watching what we were doing as well. So overall it was a fantastic session and hopefully we'll be doing it on an annual basis.
Councilor Barnabas?
I'll start with Chief Thompson. I understand you had an event the other night on Edward Street. Did you have any concerns resulting from that call?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, actually, we had a situation. It was actually this morning around 7 o'clock. There was a hydro pole on fire on Edward Street, and fire department responded to it. We closed down a portion of Edward Street in between the two Greenwood entrances onto Edward Street to protect the public and make sure that if there was further accident, no one was injured. The major concern was that in requesting for Lakeland Hydro to come and turn off power or deal with the situation, it took almost 3 hours for them to arrive on scene and deal with the situation. So we eventually talked to the residents nearby and we set up traffic barriers with the help of Public Works again to control the area, but my team had to get to work. They have real jobs that they do outside of firefighting, and we needed to get them to where they make their livelihoods and take care of their family. So everything turned out fine. Lakeland did show up on scene, but it was a long wait.
Councilor Barnabas? Yeah.
So, Mr. Mayor, this has been an ongoing concern since the merging of Parry Sound Power and Lakeland. There's been great benefit to the community in that merger, but this is one area that's been a thorn in the side for as long as that's existed. So I'm going to ask that we arrange a meeting with Mr. Litchko and his team at Lakeland. We've had conversations before about either having people stationed in Parry Sound and available in case of fire, or them entering into a contract with Hydro One so power can be shut down in these instances. If we have a major fire downtown or in a large multi-residential building, what happened today just isn't good enough. It's a safety issue for the firefighters and the entire community. We need to have this addressed in there needs to be an end here. There has to be a plan B. I know Mr. Litchko has expressed good intentions about having staff available and such. It hasn't happened. There needs to be a plan B in place. So when there's not staff available, that there is an alternative, that we don't wait 3 hours and watch buildings and businesses in Parry Sound burn to the ground. That's not right.
Agreed. So you're suggesting a letter be drafted that we have a meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sooner the better.
Okay. Council agree with that? Okay, good.
I have a couple other questions if I
Yep.
can continue
Yeah,
on.
continue. Yeah.
So my next question is for Mr. Cairns. Winter is coming, as much as we regret that maybe in some quarters. I noticed that there has been nothing done with respect to traffic controls at Forest and George, and I'm wondering when we might see something there. Again, I think that's a public safety issue. There's a 36 unit apartment building occupied. Traffic flows have changed, I expect, considerably, and something should occur sooner rather than later.
Through you, your worship. So we've had some discussions with the planning department because part of the site plan approval for the 36 unit apartment included a traffic impact assessment on that intersection. And I believe that the initial findings of that were that the intersection in its current configuration was adequate, and that there are some caveats in that report that say, should further traffic controls be considered, there's a couple of options. Again, it is a very tricky intersection because of the hill on the approach, heading, I guess, almost southbound on Forest Street. If Forest is running north-south and George east-west, sort of. If that becomes a multi-stop, there could be issues in the wintertime. If traffic is backed up onto the hill, they will have a hard time moving again in certain slippery conditions. So that was also in part of the consideration when they looked at traffic controls. We can certainly go back to that report. I can discuss it with Mr. Rand, and we can look at what is possible and practical in terms of establishing some new traffic controls at that intersection. We had also at one point discussed the option of a no left turn coming out of George Street. Part of the biggest part of the interactions at that intersection are, I believe, when traffic is making a left onto Forest out of George Street, because they have to cross the lane of oncoming traffic with that hill that has really limited sight lines. So that was an option we've discussed as staff as well. And certainly if council is willing to consider that, we could look at that as an option to help with traffic safety in that location.
Yes, Councilor Borneman.
So can that, when that review's conducted, can that report be brought forward with some sort of recommendation for council's consideration at least? I think, as I say, I think to just leave it unaddressed in any which way, shape, or form is not a good situation. And my last question, if I can continue, and I'm not sure if this is for Mr. Cairns or Mr. Thompson or both. We've purchased a number of electrical vehicles. I'm not expecting a Coles Notes version answer tonight, although I'd be happy to hear it. We've purchased the little vehicle and a couple of F-150 Lightnings. My other favorite season, budget season, is approaching. Miss Phillips will agree with that. I think that we would be well served to have some sort of update as to how those vehicles are functioning and whether we should be continuing, or how quickly we should be continuing down that path. You know, the ice maker at the arena seems to be functioning fine. I haven't seen the little gadget on the trail for quite some time, and I don't know how trucks go too fast. I can't tell one from another.
Through your worship, I would offer, we have so the GPS AVL, so the tracking devices we use to be able to understand where vehicles are, what the activities they're doing, that has a lot to do with municipal litigation. So we have that ability, and the geotab devices that we have the ability to generate reports. I'm not sure if we have enough data yet to have any substantial information to report in those reports, because we haven't had the vehicles for very long. But we can certainly do that. I think one of the other things for council's consideration is the commitment through the IceCap group and through the work with GBB. Council's formerly had committed to, I believe, net zero by 2050. That is certainly a lofty goal and a great target to work towards. So that, I think, staff have taken that into consideration in looking at the electrification of fleet vehicles. We are also experimenting with small tool conversion to battery. One of the biggest polluters in GHG emitters are small two-stroke engines and leaf blowers and chainsaws and weed eaters and that sort of thing. So we are also looking at that. But I think perhaps it's time we take another look at the future goals if we are still aiming for net zero by 2050, because electrification offers an opportunity to advance those goals substantially.
So, Mr. Cairns, I had hoped that the reports that you folks can generate would encourage us, not discourage us from reaching for that goal. But as I say, I think that, we need some verification that we're headed in the right direction, or that we're not just blindly going down a path that's not responsible from a broad sense in the community.
Through your worship, I just offer to, the ability to report is also it exists in the gas vehicles as well. So when we're tracking them, we will have the ability to look at the vehicle usage and understand, does vehicle A make any sense to look at electrification or not based on its usage, idle time, distance traveled. So this is a brand new system for us in the last 3-4 months. We're implementing it. But I'd be happy we'll take a look at what data we have available now. But obviously with a bigger sample, we'll have more robust reporting, but we will have that ability to come back for sure, because as Councilor Borneman mentioned, we as staff want to make sure that we're not just blindly heading down a road that I've always said I like things substantiated by data. So we have that ability with these devices, which is somewhat comforting, rather than us just thinking this is a good thing. So we can certainly take a look at what data we have to date. And I will suggest that it will only get better. I'm not going to forecast what the reports are going to say, but we will have that data available.
Okay, thank you. Councilor McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Meredith. So this would be for Mr. Kearns then, and back to the George and Forest Street, and actually other intersections where line of sight. So a couple of questions here. First of all, when the studies are done and it comes back that this intersection doesn't warrant any kind of traffic control or intervention or stop and go or whatnot, I'm just wondering the standards, who sets the standards, and if you consider that if we live in a perfect world and everybody follows the rules, that the standards would apply. But we all know that people go speeding through streets. And so as an example, trying to turn left off George onto Forest, if you got somebody coming up that hill pretty quickly, as far as the line of sight and the mathematics goes, you're gonna, you're asking for an accident if someone is avoiding the speed limit, and just so. I guess my question is that we've asked about other intersections in town, and I'm sort of wondering, because we've asked about four-way stops in various places, and I could see I could see the logistics of having a no left turn off George Street, but I suspect that you get a lot of pushback from that, and probably need some enforcement because I think people would be in too much of a hurry otherwise. But in terms of line of sight, what's an ideal line of sight that's safe? Because we certainly at some intersections don't have a lot, and especially in some places where huge trucks are parked on the side of streets, and you've got to get way out into the lane before you can see something coming.
Through your worship, if I miss any of that, let me know. I'm going to try and work through those. So as far as design goes, there's provincial design standards. So there's a geometric design manual for, it's called highways. Any roadway is considered a highway in the province. It takes into consideration all sorts of things like traffic volume, size of traffic, speed of traffic. And those things come in. There's no correct answer to the question you asked about line of sight. It changes with the geometry of the road, the angle that roads meet each other, the vertical elevation changes, the horizontal elevation changes, the design speed of the roadway. And I know it gets difficult to design for poor driving habits, frankly. I'm not an advocate of speeding, and both of my kids are learning to drive and they hear it from me regularly. The speed limits that you see on roadways are limits designed for your perfect day in July, for instance. Outside of that, you shouldn't be doing the same speed in February in a nice storm as you do in July when a nice sunny day. That's my personal point of view from a traffic perspective. And the speed limits are just that. And I understand all sorts of people exceed them on a regular basis. Legally, that's the limit. And the reason that that limit is there, design engineers know, and there's some guidelines, the road's designed for a higher speed to accommodate for that already. I would suggest that we're starting to see speeds beyond those design speeds, unfortunately. And in that case, the roadway design cannot compensate for poor driving habits. I've been an advocate for many years of lower speed limits. I think personally in an urban area, a base 40-kilometer-hour speed limit is better than 50 because people are not doing 60, they're maybe doing 50. So all of those kinds of things come into consideration. Sight lines, that intersection in particular has been checked because that was one of our concerns when that planning application came forward. And so, you know, that's a significant increase in the number of turning movements onto George Street from where it was previously. So it was investigated. They did come back with that information. Four-way stops are not always the answer at every intersection. I would also caution against doing that outside of design standards, because if you start to step outside of engineering design standards, when litigation happens, the questions will be asked, why did you do that? And it's hard to say, have a reasoning to step outside of engineering design standards from a litigation perspective. So although it may seem like a really good idea, there are reasons that four-way stops are recommended in certain locations and not others. The traffic volume, side traffic, if it's less than the other. People, again, aren't patient if they don't normally see someone there. Next time I'm there, there's never, no, I'm just gonna go because there's never anybody there. And that's when, unfortunately, bad accidents happen. So that there's, I guess the short of it is there's a lot of information. There's not a standard on design site distances and triangles. As new roadways are designed, they're designed with all of those things. When we're retrofitting or trying to rebuild what we've had for 100 years, for instance, it gets very challenging.
That's reasonable. Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Correspondence, Ms. Johnson. Oh. Got enough there? Light's still on too.
Your worship, we have several items of correspondence. The first is from our MP Scott Aitchison. In his role as Conservative Party Shadow Minister for Housing and Diversity and Inclusion, he responded to the town's resolution at the last meeting regarding homelessness and mental health issues and the housing crisis. MP Aitchison identifies what the Conservative Party would do if in power. The next item is from the Northern Ontario School of Medicine University. There's actually two items. The first is the Town of Parry Sound Bursary Impact Report for the period May 1st, 2023 to April 30th, 2024. And just a couple statistics with that. The Town of Parry Sound's bursary closing balance on April 30th, 2024 is $37,510.79. The spend account closing balance on April 30th, 2024 is $1,715.04. And of course, the Northern Ontario School of Medicine thanks the town for for this contribution. And the next item is, again, from the Northern Ontario School of Medicine University, notice of celebration of 20 years, and offers some opportunities to contribute to them in partnership and in celebrating this 20th anniversary milestone. The next two items of correspondence are from the Township of the Archipelago and the municipality of McDougall respectively, and they are supportive resolutions to the town's request of the province to establish regulations for ride-sharing services. Council will recall that the town passed a resolution asking the province to establish regulations around ride-sharing services back in the spring, and then again a few meetings ago further requested that other municipalities support that resolution. The last couple meetings ago, the Township of McKellar sent in a resolution of support, and now Archipelago and McDougall have similarly sent in resolutions of support, and that's the correspondence.
Okay, so the deputation, as I said, will be at 8 o'clock. So we'll do reports. We'll start with Councillor Keith.
Thank you, Your Worship, fellow councillors, staff, and public. Just a few things. I attended the Chamber of Commerce Small Business Symposium, and the topic was on youth and entrepreneurship and getting more youth involved. The speakers were quite interesting. I found it a very informative session. I also attended Barb Carr's Lifestyle Expo, and certainly it provided a lot of opportunity to get into volunteerism and help to make our community a really great place to live in. And it certainly was quite interesting. And I also think she should be commended for taking that on, because there was a lot of people there. And I know that some people sign up, and it's the only way sometimes, if people don't have a computer, that they realize there are other opportunities for them to be out there and doing things. I attended the Committee of Adjustment meeting. There was one application that was reviewed and approved. And I also attended the Parry Sound, which is now the OPP Detachment Board. So the West Parry Sound OPP Detachment Board. And this was our first meeting. We reviewed the stats for the area, and the town of Parry Sound certainly is in sync with the stats. We're a little under, so things seem to be very stable in regards to the statistics. And because it was our first meeting and the members that were there were at this time municipal reps, there has been no citizen advisory members appointed yet. However, I was elected as chair of this detachment board. There will be a lot of work involved in developing policies, procedures, etc. So I think this will be a new learning experience for all of us, and that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations or condolences, depending on. There'll be a lot of work. Thank you for taking that on. Councillor Ashford.
The last couple of weeks was light for me on meetings. So I took an opportunity to get out with the family in the fall colors. I just wanted to encourage all Parry Sounders to take that opportunity themselves to get out on the fitness trail, get up to Tower Hill specifically. Periwinkle Trail, I think, is the best trail for kids in all of Parry Sound District. It is just beautiful. They're doing an amazing job. It is, you would even say, I don't want the gardeners to be too upset, it's almost better in the fall, even though the flowers aren't there in the same level. But it is just beautiful to run and play and do those things. And if you are looking for exercise, please come take my kids, because they make you climb the tower every time. But a real beautiful experience around town in the last little bit. So please take the time, get out there, see all the things the town has to offer. In addition to that, and with that, it was Sunday town staff were still out working hard and pumping out the pond there. So the girls were pretty upset with them and they went over and voiced their concern for the fish. But the town employees were right there making sure that they knew the fish were all going to be okay for the next year. And then the only other thing was the Witches Walk. We now have multiple years of having the Parry Sound Witches Walk. It was wonderful, well attended. The dance was great. The fire department helped organize streets, made things kind of run well. There were tons of local businesses out there. The DBA, April, and everybody was out there making everything work. It was just a wonderful experience. And just, I don't know if this is going to make the mayor uncomfortable, but I went as the mayor from Nightmare Before Christmas. That was my costume. So I don't know how you feel about that, Mayor, but it was a wonderful experience for everybody.
Councillor Boleski?
Thank you, your worship. It was a fairly quiet, almost a month, it seemed, doesn't it, that we were away. On October the 21st, I attended the Belvedere financial meeting. It's kind of nice to look through the paperwork and notice black across the bottom of it. There's very, very little red. The management is doing an excellent job of keeping everything in the black, which is good. On October the 23rd, I attended the Board of Management from Belvedere. We're really busy trying to get the extra beds set up and get it in place. We had a kind of a drop dead date. You had to get the plans in and the everything approved, and we're getting close to that date. Some of it had to be in by November the 1st, and I believe they got it in all right. And we are looking at maybe a different way of managing the complex. So that's an ongoing thing as well. And that's my report. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor McCann?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, staff and public, and Councillor Ashford. I want to caution you that Ann Bossert may well have you pulling weeds next summer up on Tower Hill. And by the way, I was surprised to learn too that the goldfish actually remain in the pond. They kind of go in underneath and they're there for the winter. And I don't envy them one bit, but so they're safe and sound. Your girls will be pleased to know that. Thursday afternoon, 2 o'clock, October 24th, I attended the inaugural meeting of the Downtown Quality of Experience team. I'm very excited to be part of this committee. There's lots of work ahead of us. Following the introductions, we had an overview of the team goals and objectives. They include identifying underlying issues and recommend solutions, promote and improve safety of the security of the downtown area, identify and discuss best practices to resolve downtown issues that decrease the quality of the experience. We want to work collaboratively as a team to implement identified solutions, educate team members and the public and other things that were identified. I'm going to let Councillor McDonald speak more to that as he is our chair. Certainly a draft of the new official plan was introduced to the group, and we talked about retail hierarchy, window coverage, height minimums, the idea of putting in more bike racks downtown, the issue of banks and alcohol and bar sales relocating outside the downtown core, and having a dedicated service for a dedicated service area or a hub for Children's Aid, DSAB, Harvest Share, the Warming Center, and other social services. So we have another meeting coming up soon, and one of the things that the OPP talked about was a CamSafe program. It's a very interesting program on how merchants can tie into the OPP system, and it makes reporting and I guess rendering or harvesting evidence from cameras very much easier. So that's something to look into if you're a business owner. Then on Thursday evening, that same day, I attended the West Parry Sound District monthly board meeting. That was through Zoom. Financial reports were reviewed and accepted. There was to have been a curling bonds field as a fundraiser, but we had to postpone that because there just weren't enough teams registered yet. So that may still come. In the meantime, I understand that team membership team membership inputs funds are being returned to, refunded to those who signed up. The museum was happy to receive an NOHFC grant to hire someone this early January, and it received a Trillium grant as well to organize the research library. There's a firefighting exhibit, which is currently underway. The McMichael exhibition at the museum will be opening soon, with a grand opening in the works to be announced soon. I've mentioned this before. Now, this is a display that's here from the McMichael exhibition, and it's entitled People of the Watershed, and it features a whole bunch of photographs and history from John McPhee. And so the museum only had room for a portion of this exhibit, but it's worth catching. And certainly you can look into that. Check out the museum's website, museumontowerhill.com, for more information. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Borneman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, everyone. I too have had a fairly light couple of weeks. Councillor Gillespie mentioned the Board of Management meeting at Belvedere. And yeah, it's kind of pleasant seeing some black numbers there. I give the HR staff full credit for that. They've been able to do really well recruiting nurses and PSWs in particular. The amount of agency staff has been reduced to almost nil. And for comparison, agency staff are at a minimum 50% higher in cost than your own employees, because you're paying for travel and meals and rooms and such. And yesterday I also with Belvedere attended a meeting with the life lease residents to update them again with respect to the proposed new building. The plan currently would see one of the life lease units eliminated to ensure enough space for the new beds. 23 new parking spaces are proposed, and on the Belvedere property proper. And in all likelihood, we're about to see the relocation of community support services to an actual storefront location downtown, which will eliminate some of the parking and traffic problems that go along with any expansion. And I'll close just by saying November 11th is next week. I hope everyone gets out and attends the service and supports the veterans in this country. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, fellow councillors, town staff, and public. On October the 15th, I attended the final cruise ship from Penang Cruise Lines. And I'm happy to hear that the Pearl Mist will be returning for approximately 12 visits next season. So hopefully we'll hear more cruise lines beginning to firm up their schedule as well in the coming weeks. October the 24th, we did have the Downtown Quality of Experience Committee meeting. Some of the attendees included the DBA, the CMHA, DSAB, OPP, Town of Parry Sound. We discussed the mandates of all the involved stakeholders, organizations, discussions of issues happening in the downtown core. It was recognized that no one organization can make changes on their own, so we're looking to work together to better improve the downtown experience. The question being asked was how we can collectively make suggestions and changes suitable for the downtown users. As Councillor McCann mentioned, the new official draft plan was introduced to the group and noted that will be coming forward in the next few months. Highlighted areas were mentioned about the retail hierarchy, window coverage, height minimums. Downtown business issues were discussed, including vandalism, graffiti, cigarettes, garbage damages to stores, and harassment, drug use, and mental health challenges. Installing 24-hour surveillance cameras, clearing overgrown foliage areas within the town property, and putting up more lights for collective ideas, as well as mentorship programs and the possibility of tiny homes. Changing the downtown garbage cans to more permanent, non-recoverable containers could help with the littering and garbage on the streets. As mentioned, the Cam Safe program by the OPP have not had any downtown businesses register yet, so I do encourage them to do so, as this free service helps the OPP save time by having a list of cameras that they could follow up on if they deem necessary. And I should emphasize that by registering the business, the OPP don't have access to the cameras unless they have reasonable grounds. Talk of the hub for social service organizations to be housed in the same building, perhaps away from the downtown core, but within walking distance. And the next meeting will dive deeper into the SWOT analysis and flesh out some more ideas and strategies on what can be done moving forward. And we appreciate all the stakeholders that participated and look forward to more fruitful discussions in the coming months. And that is the end of my report.
Okay, thank you. Council, staff, and public, October the 16th, I attended a public health meeting, and on the 17th, CO Harris, Mike, Mr. Kearns, the Director of Public Works, and myself made a deputation to the Archipelago Council and staff. And October 22nd, I attended a Rotary fundraiser, and the fundraising effort was to help the fight against polio, and the money raised at the meeting, the dinner was tripled, by a donor, which was really fantastic. October 24th, the day began by bringing greetings on behalf of council to the attendees at the Stockey Center for Small Business Week, a well-attended event put on by the Parry Sound Area Business and Development Center and the Parry Sound Area Business Support Network. We know certainly that small businesses are the backbone of any community, and I want to thank Janice Heidman and her team for putting this event together and providing an opportunity for those in attendance to network and learn. On October 24th at 2 p.m., I attended the Downtown Experience meeting, which is held at the Fire Hall. Certainly a good start and more to come. Then October 24th at 6:30 p.m., I attended the Parry Sound District Land Ambulance meeting. There are a couple of items on the agenda tonight that we'll be dealing with that came out of that meeting. October the 25th, we raised the poppy flag at the town office. And on the 29th at 6:30, I attended the West Parry Sound Economic Development Collaborative meeting, which was held at the town of the Archipelago's office. October 31st at 11 a.m., Mr. Harris and I did follow up an interview with a magazine that looks at what municipalities are doing. We'd already done an interview and it was published back in January. And so they're doing a follow-up interview on what Parry Sound's doing, which is excellent for Parry Sound. Probably come out in January, December, January as well. So it's just all good stuff. October 31st, then at 8 p.m. after the trick-or-treaters settled down, I attended the Diwali event, which is held at the Brunswick Restaurant, which is under new management now. November 4th, Greg Mason and I raised the Georgian Bay Biosphere flag at the town office. And at this time, I'd like to offer my condolences to the family of Hector Liebert. Hector was involved in many aspects of our community. The Legion for sure was huge, and also Rotary and others as well. I mean, he managed the Dominion store for years, and then it became an EMP. And he was always there to raise the poppy flag at the town office, and he wasn't this year. So there's a gentleman that quietly went about his business and did a lot in this community, and he will be missed. So that's my report. Oh. Need one more. Okay. Moved by Councillor McCann and second by Council McDonald, that council approve the 2025 district line ambulance budget in the total amount of $13,650,076.08, including capital expenditures of $500,000 from the EMS capital reserve and $575,000 from the EMS surplus reserve. Chief Thompson, do you want to give a kind of a recap of highlights on that budget, please?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. Land ambulance budget, the key number, of course, is 3.25%. That's the amount that the levy will need to increase. That's distributed throughout all the municipalities through the District of Parry Sound. That's a 3.25% overall. There may be slight variations in that dependent upon movement in weighted assessment throughout the entire district. For 3.25%, there's a few enhancements that are going to be included in the budget. One is completing a night shift that's on the west side of the district. The Humphrey night shift right now is for 10 months. It'll be expanded to 12 months. There will be an increase in the Parry Sound summer upstaff hours. As everyone's aware, our business is much stronger in the summertime. And to address that, we implemented a upstaff in the Parry Sound area. A couple of years ago, we've slowly been expanding that. So we're going to continue to expand that so that we have more resources on when the needs are greater. That particular enhancement has worked so well from a management perspective that we're also going to be, we're recommending implementing one on the east side of the district as well for long weekends to begin with in the summertime. Other than that, staff did review the budget minutely, and there were savings to be found in some areas, and we addressed that in the budget. The capital amounts that were spoken of in the resolution, that is for the purchase of 2 ambulances. That's our replacement schedule this year. Ambulances continue to escalate in price, and we put approximately 50,000 kilometers on every ambulance each year that we have in the fleet. So right now we're on a 6-year cycle. We sometimes fluctuate between 5 and 6 year cycles with regards to the ambulance. So when we remove them from service, they have 250 to 300,000 kilometers on them. Actually, I was looking at my reports today, and we currently have one that's still in service with 313,000 on it. And so it'll be March before that unit gets replaced. So they get well used, and they're not driven nicely, as you can well imagine. The maintenance cycles on them are extremely well managed as well to keep them running. The other major capital expenditure is to replace the majority of the defibrillators in the system. So these are the in-ambulance defibrillators. They're not like your defibrillators that you find public access by any means. These are 12-lead defibrillators. And to replace that fleet is $575,000. So those 2 purchases come out of reserves. And of course, we budget through public sector accounting board practices, and all the capital is funded through amortization. So that's how the budget system runs, and that's included in the budget.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Councilor Borneman?
What's the life cycle on those defibrillators in the ambulances, Chief Thompson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we amortize them and replace them over a 7-year cycle. So in 7 years, we do a complete replacement of the defibrillators. By that point, right now we're in the 7th year, and we have more repairs for them. They're harder to get repaired as some of the parts are becoming obsolete. They're not so easy to find, and that's the nature of the business.
Yeah.
One other question. How often, municipalities grow at different rates or don't? How often is our contributions from each of the municipalities reviewed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's done on an annual basis. I'll actually hand this over to Ms. Phillips, and she can probably explain that in a easier fashion for everyone to understand than I could.
So each year we collect the taxable assessment for each of the municipalities that participate. And then the levy is apportioned out to all the municipalities based on their assessment. So we do that every year. And for the town, the increase would be approximately $10,083 based on our apportionment. That's what's estimated for 2025. Yeah. So each year that's updated.
Any other questions? All in favor then? And that's carried. Thank you. Now, we have Mr. Carmichael in the audience now. And yes, and Councillor Wing as well. Are you prepared to do your deputation now and we'll get it done? Okay, that would be wonderful. Yeah. Yes. Just putting the presentation up on the screen for the general public to be aware of, and welcome. Yes. There's a side button there too. Now press the front button. There you go.
There we go. Thank you very much. Mayor McGarvey and Town Council, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to speak to you about the new build at Belvedere Heights. We've been rushing around over the last few months to try and complete this project or get it started before the loss of the $35 per bed per day, which is the key piece in terms of the financing, which you'll hear from Dawn shortly. What I want to do is just talk to you. I got the easy stuff, the fun stuff. I want to just talk to you about the design, and on the screen, there we go. The first picture is the looking at it from the facing west, and it looks very much like the current location, but it's come out a little bit farther. It's almost out to the property line, and we will be thanking the staff of Parry Sound so much for the help they have given us and continue to give us to get this done. They have been just amazing. Extremely supportive, but extremely helpful as well. So we're hoping to move that part forward because we have some pieces that have to happen. So that's the next. Sorry, that's okay. He's fast. The next slide is facing south, which is, you can see on the right are the life lease units. And the way the unit it comes out, you can see it coming out just towards the west. The next view is the view of the new main entrance, which is on the lower level. And it will be the entrance mainly for administration. You'll remember the last time we talked about this is originally the original design was to put 24 units in the basement, and which is what we hurried to try and do, and then discovered, first of all, we couldn't put 24 in, we'd need 22. And then our architects and staff came up with a very good idea to say, why would we put our residents in the basement? Why wouldn't we put administration, the chapel, the auditorium, those kinds of things in the basement? And the people who live there should have the best opportunity to the best views and the best place. So that's why we do have 22 beds on the main floor. And the lower level, which you see there, will be the new main entrance. You're fast again. Okay. The other piece that I wanted to just talk to you about before we show you the design is just what they did, our architects did, in terms of looking at Georgian Bay and all its wonder, the bay, the rocks, the sunsets, the grass, the color, all the color of Georgian Bay, and they put this into this new home area. And this is a 22-bed home area. Each home areas, they have home areas. There's certain specific sizes. And this one will be a 22-bed area. So it will be all done in these lovely colors and rocks and skies. This is a design or a schematic, not a design, of the new build. And you can see when we're talking about where the property line is and where we're coming out to. You can see where we were, and you can see where we're coming out to now with the new build. It'll be 12 new units that are totally rebuilt out. And then the other 10 will be a renovation of the main floor. So you can see that new units are facing west and north. Those are the north facing new units there. And the balance will be the renovation on the main floor. One of the things that we had an issue, or not an issue, but a concern about is parking. And parking is something that you'll notice. I mean, you all know where Belvedere Avenue is and how it's now one way. And I said that when I lived there, it was two way. But things do change, and one way works. But we are a home in the center of a residential area. We are adding 22 new units, and there was concern that what was this going to do to traffic? And so we have done some interesting looking at traffic. The other thing I should mention to you is Community Social Services, which was in the building, will be moving out, and they're moving into the old Shoppers on Main Street. So that will eliminate the Meals on Wheels, the traffic for CSS, some of the exercise classes, some will still be there, but it will eliminate a large, and their parking, a large amount of traffic for that. So coupled with that, if you look at this schematic, you'll see on the far right, there are 23 new staff parking spots. Those will help alleviate any additional concerns about parking. The concern, I think, was that the new admin entrance down on the lower level is very close to where I used to live. And so there was concern that there would be additional traffic. And what we're looking at there is basically it's administration staff. So there's not a lot of traffic in and out. Staff come in and then they leave. So that admin entrance, we anticipate, instead of what it was, I think was 30 to 40, 30 to 42 staff and people moving through that area. There'll only be 20 to 30 daily. And that's including, that's just not, that's not cars. Somebody said to me, that's cars. And I said, no, that's cars and people. So it includes people walking as well. So, so I think in terms of parking, we should do quite well. I would mention to you that our administrator met with one resident today. That the residents didn't, only one came to the meeting, but it was a person who lived very close, and they were quite comfortable with what they were showing in terms of where we're looking and how the parking is going to change. So I think we should be okay in terms of the concerns regarding parking. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dawn to do the really fun stuff, is the costs and what it's going to cost us and how we're going to do that.
Well, thank you very much. So I'll cozy up to you here. So the overall cost of the project is, well, I should say it is still a Class B estimate. It's not a Class A estimate. We're expecting that this week. But the costs have been fairly stable over the last 5 months or so, around the $13.4 million mark. The hard cost being the construction cost, around 10.2 million. 5% contingency. Ministry requires a 5% contingency. Infrastructure, the soft cost, $1 million, is for the engineering, architect, and the permits through the town here, of course. And IO, Infrastructure Ontario, requires a 2 to 3% contingency. HST, there's a question mark. We should be eligible for the full rebate because we are building new homes for people. There is a significant renovation component, so there may be fine print in the CI government rules, CR rules. We're not sure about that. So without luck, that 200,000 will not be in the final cost. FF&E is furniture, fixture, and equipment. That's plus a contingency. That's fairly generous at $900,000. And the interest at 5% would be the Infrastructure Ontario construction financing over 2 years. Once we start building, before we actually convert it to a 25-year debenture. And the bottom right is the rough size of the building, the new 19,000 square feet. And that construction cost varies between $300 a square feet up to close to 700. The new construction, you see there's about 3,800 square feet of new construction. The renovation on the ground floor is 8,600. And then the lower floor where we're moving the administration is the 6,500. And that is the first area to be renovated, which will start as soon as we can get approval from the ministry. In terms of project revenue, there's two components. Most of the money we're talking about today is coming from the province. So all homes that get approved by the ministry get a $250,000 planning grant, no matter what your size you are, large or small. The development grant is $19,000 per bed and change. So that's where the calculation comes for the $392,000. As Pam talked about that $35 supplement, we are in a big hurry to get that because for nonprofit homes, we are allowed to convert up to $15 of that into upfront cash. So rather than taking $3 million over 25 years, we can take the $1.78 million discounted upfront, which is what we are opting to do, which gives us about $2.4 million in cash. We are asking all of our 8 municipal partners to return the funds that we returned to you back in 3 years ago. So that would give us a total of about $3 million worth of cash in terms of the upfront cash to apply to the $13.4 million bill that you'll see. So the other, I mean, of course, probably in some ways the really good news is that with the bill, the ministry guarantees construction funding subsidy over 25 years. And as a small rural home greater than 96 beds, we are eligible for the $21 per day, which is about $4 million over the 25 years. The balance of the $35 supplement, the $20, right after we take the 15 off, there's 20 left, more or less doubles that. So that's why we get the $41 per day, which is approximately $333,000 a year, guaranteed for 25 years. That we can then apply to the 25-year debenture. The other increase in revenue, of course, if we're adding 22 private rooms, which have about a $900 per month top up for private differential, and it's about $185,000, let's say about a 97% occupancy rate, which again will be new income that we will see. So this slide brings the two slides together, the $13.4 million worth of cost. We take the $3 million off. We have $10.2 million to be funded. The old infrastructure rates of about a month ago was 4.35%. We expect that to come down. But if based on that estimate, it would cost approximately $674,000 in principal and interest for the 25-year debenture. The $333,000 that we talked about comes off of that. We have the net balance to be funded by ourselves. And fortunately, one of the great things about adding these 22 beds to make us a 123-bed home is we're basically increasing revenue capacity for space that doesn't generate any revenue now for us almost at all, other than the rental we're getting from CSS. So there's huge economy of scale because we don't add new administration staff. So there's approximately $439,000 a year that we estimate. We hope we can even do better than that, but that's our current estimate of the economy of scale with the marginal increase in staffing costs and supply costs to care for those 22 new residents. So we're predicting approximately just under $100,000 surplus that gives us some wiggle room in case there's any surprises. So Infrastructure Ontario is a great place to go if you're a municipality, because they actually streamline the funding compared to the hoops that we have to go through as a district municipal home or any municipal home other than so there's quite a like I said, I mentioned here, there's a 15-point checklist. One of them is environmental assessment, and as you know, you can't get that done in a month in terms of meeting any deadlines. It might take a year to get a phase 1 environmental assessment. So that's all waived if a municipality applies on our behalf. And so thanks to the work from our board chair, Councillor Pam Wing, Carling has stepped forward to agree to do that. So they passed both bylaws to support the construction loan, which will be over the next 2 years, and also the bylaw to convert that into a 25-year debenture. So they at the moment are on the hook for 100% of that support. It is a contingent liability with low risk in terms of the way it would be reported. And of course, we will be asking all the remaining 7 municipalities to join in for the debenture support next in the fall of 2026 when we convert to debenture. The little box on the bottom, as you can see, there's not a huge difference in the interest rate between what we can get at the 4.65% compared to what you can get at the 4.35%. Again, this is 2 months old data. But the big issue is the debt service ratio, where we have to come up with 1.2, which would be $1.2 million worth of cash. And they don't accept economies of scale. It's a cash-based system. So that's where we would have to find additional 1.2 million to do that. And we don't want to do that. This is a slide you have seen before. This is the $700,000 that we returned in 2021. Back then, the Long-Term Care Act only allowed us to keep 15% in reserve of our budget, which was 1.6 million. We had 2.3 million in reserve, so we had to return 700,000. The new act, called the Fixing Long-Term Care Act, has increased that to 25%. So now we can keep 3 million. So if the timing had been different, we could have kept the $700,000. But anyway, be as it may, as you say, we need the money to help offset some of those initial costs. So this was the hurry up and wait for the $35 per diem supplement. This was the announcement that the ministry made. And as you may recall, you got notification from us. We got that letter on April 5th from the ministry saying that the campus of care was deferred. And we had 3 options. Only 2 made sense. Status quo, 101 beds, or add the additional 20 beds that we had been approved. We only found out on April 12th that there was an April 30th deadline to actually get the submission in place. And then a week later, we found out the firm that did the initial plans was no longer in business. And so we scrambled to go to Belanger Salich, the architects who did the campus of care, and asked them to fit us into their schedule. No notice. And so everyone stepped up. TD Bank stepped up to give us a letter of expression of interest in a week. Belanger Salich stepped up in a week, and then we figured out how to do the funding, et cetera, as well. So we all managed to pull this off on April 30th. And that was building the 24 beds in the basement. It was only the first week in May that the architects actually had the chance to visit on site and discovered all those issues that Pam had talked about earlier. Well, this is not going to work very well in the basement for a lot of reasons. And so the ministry was expecting us to come back in middle of May, talking about the deficiencies they identified with our first plan. And here we come back with 22 beds on the first floor. Thank God they loved it. And so that was pretty exciting news. So this slide, you can see the flurry of activity here was the fact that we actually had to totally redesign this from scratch, right? To build a preliminary plan in the drawing. So we being the architects, and Kaney, our administrator. And so it took until the end of June to get all this done. The month of July, the ministry spent reviewing this preliminary plan. Early August, you can see in bold, we got the approval. Then to prepare the working drawings, the blueprints, actually to design the new build, which was submitted at the end of August. Again, some questions, and everything they needed, they got by September 9th to review the initial working drawing submission. And then they didn't quite make the October 4th deadline to get back to us. It was October 8th, right around the time of the town hall meeting that some of you attended, which was it 9th, I think? 8th, yeah, right, of October. And so we are in the process now of still working through some of these dates. The really great news is the ministry had announced that they will consider extensions beyond the November 30th deadline. Other homes have got that extension, we've been told. We are in the queue to be considered, and we've got some really good encouragement that our project's in really good shape, and we should be eligible for the extension. So we're hoping that we will get that, so that will help us push this into December as perhaps will need be. So where we're at is, as you're very well aware of, the site plan and the building permit review that you are doing. And as Pam said, we're so grateful for all your support and how you're trying to expedite this for us. It's really, thank you very much for all the hard work. that your staff have done that is really phenomenal. And so Carling is working with Infrastructure Ontario to set up the paperwork for the funding loan. We hired a construction management firm. We did go to tender for that. We had to sole source the architect, right, with a 1 week, 2 week notice. So we had no choice but to do an emergency allocation for that. But we did do a proper tender for a construction management firm. And Quinnen won that, the firm out of Aurelia. They are prepared to issue the tenders as soon as we're ready to go. They are, like I say, close to having your Class A estimate ready. And we are working on the approval to construct package, which was that November 8th deadline on the previous slide. And the land valuation just came in today. The licensing review is almost done. Insurance is in place. And then, and say you're working through the site plan and the building permit stuff. And later this month, we'll have the schedule and all the other items here. And then, of course, tendering and the final result will take 5-6 weeks beyond that. We are asking your support as well, perhaps to do early works project in terms of adding the 23 parking spots in the northwest corner. And the construction company is prepared to move on that. We've asked permission from the ministry. We probably don't need it, but we're keeping them informed on everything we do to keep that great relationship that we have with them intact. And so the other thing we're asking is for all of the other 7 municipalities to provide the construction funding support technically under the Long-Term Care Act. As Belvedere, if we enter into any loan agreement, we probably should have support of all of the 8 owners to do that, which is, you know, what we were talking about with the TD Bank as well. So that's what we're asking for. And then, of course, as we mentioned, we would like all of the 8 municipalities, there's the remaining 7, to join Carling for the 25-year debenture. And this is the draft resolution that we had sent out in support of that initial relationship that Belvedere Heights would paper with Carling, that we would ensure that we would flow all the operating funds required for any monthly payments, interest payments for the construction loan over the next 2 years, and we do expect occupancy by December 2026. The infrastructure rules are 90 days, within 90 days of substantial completion, your construction loan gets rolled into the 25-year debenture. So that will probably be 2 years from now, next fall, 2-year fall of 2026. And that's our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very informative. Councilor McCann.
You wouldn't mind repeating all that, would you?
Oh, sure.
It sounds complicated, and I'm sure it is. So congratulations on that. The returning the funds, how is that expected? Is that like a lump sum, or will that be done through through a levy? And what does that? How would the levy be impacted over the years to come? At all?
The Councilor, the first question was the 700,000, right?
Well, yeah. How
so,
are?
Yeah. So we didn't really formally levy. Pamela sent a very nice letter to all of the mayors and CEOs asking for you to return the funds. So that's a one-time lump sum payment. 7 of the 8 municipalities actually put it into a reserve when they got the money back. 1 didn't. But so the ones who have it in reserve have it readily available to return as a lump sum when you can. And did you also have a question about the ongoing levy?
Well, yeah. Does that change in light of the expanded operation?
No, we are, determined to keep that levy at the $1 million mark for now, that it's now currently at. And so we have, like I say, that's why we've been working very diligently on the cost containment issues and additional revenue opportunity. For example, making sure we're optimizing that private and semi-private differential income. Well, these are things that we are working on. So yes, and finding more economies of scale beyond what we've estimated. That's just a rough estimate, and so we will then. Go ahead. So yes, So we want the levy not to increase and hopefully decrease over time, but won't be any decreases anytime soon,
Okay, great. Thank you.
correct?
Councilor McDonald?
I don't have any questions, but I just would like to thank you all for the hard work that everyone has done to put this together. And it was quite a fast and furious timeline that you had to work with, and really appreciate all the hard work that everyone put into that, including town staff and all the parties that are concerned. So thank you.
Councilor Boardman?
I'm biased. I'm part of the board, so I'm biased. I've already, bought into this plan. And I want to thank Pam and, her history in the neighborhood has brought some sensitivity, I guess, to the issues of a home within a residential area. I think she was the perfect person to deal with that. And I want to thank Mr. Carmichael in particular. Don's been a workhorse at the board since his appointment. He has a lot of insider knowledge and experience within the ministry and the healthcare system. And I think it goes without saying that without his contributions to the board at Belvedere, this application quite simply wouldn't be happening. At our last board meeting, the number of people on the wait list looking for bed spaces was over 100. So 22 doesn't get us there, but it gets us part way there. And to Councillor McCann's question about the levy, I think Mr. Carmichael has demonstrated that it's his raison d'etre to cut that municipal levy.
We did a little bit of that, thank you.
He's looked at every way possible to beg, borrow, and scrounge extra dollars out of the ministry and force them into helping us wherever possible. So my only question for him or hope tonight is that you stay with the board to see this project to fruition, because I fear that without you, that we'd be left wanting somewhere along the way.
It's okay, well, we got my buddy here, so.
Councilor McCann?
Yeah, also too, one of the concerns I had, and I'm sure everyone did, and you have to do what you have to do sometimes, is that where the parking lot is going, not actually cutting down a lot of trees over there. So most of the vegetation is being preserved, I understand.
There are 3 trees coming down and the 17 stay.
Wonderful.
So, and it's the mature ones stay.
The little squirrels will have their home.
Yeah,
for
that's
another
right.
year, couple of years.
Yes, to Councilor Borneman's point, not the nice words, but thank you for that. We have approximately 3 turnovers per month, so about 40 per year. So if we have, so that's why we've always had a 2-year wait list. So does Lakeland, right? In terms of the number of people on the list. So I mean, 22 beds isn't enough, but it's certainly better than 0.
That's right. Councilor Ashford?
I think one of the things I've been learning over the last couple of years is that the bed amounts that we're getting per day really kind of lock us in to having this facility, and that's one of the main reasons why the campus of care didn't go ahead, was because we're relatively lucky that we have such kind of nice newer system than some other communities that don't have it as well of us. And I know one of the first things I thought when I moved to Parry Sound is, would this not be a great spot to retire right there overlooking the bay, right? Like a beautiful spot. So I was, as we kind of were looking at the campus of care and I was learning about that, these new beds, which are really needed, are kind of setting the stage for the next 25 years for Belvedere. So I was just wondering what kind of things, what's the vision going forward over the next 25, 30 years? Because I think our amounts per bed will run out on the other beds, and we'll kind of have these beds kind of continuing. So I think it's kind of almost a fairly dramatic change, right? From what we were imagining a year ago to what we're imagining now. So So I was wondering if you had any words or comments on that, on what we're really looking Belvedere to look like. You know, you can't predict the future, but what's the vision now as we're kind of going into the next 25, 30 years? And maybe we'll be staying at the, you know, this is now back on the books as a possibility for me of one day being a resident.
So I mean, to some extent, the campus of care isn't totally dead. I mean, it's deferred. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The fact that Belvedere is only 20 years old doesn't qualify in the ministry's books. Like Castle Home is being redeveloped. They have beds that are 1960s that are being redeveloped, right? Which are now in the process of being redeveloped. We did that, right? When we converted, and so yeah, so we can't add any more beds there. I mean, would it be possible to convert life lease into long-term care in the future? Yes. Yeah, potentially, but that's when life lease expires, right? Many years from now. So that would be a possibility. But the campus of care concept on the West Prairie Sound Health Center ground could evolve in the future. And then as our building becomes old, we would be totally phased out of 40 years or whatever it might be, right? So if you're talking about the vision, I think that's what you're referring to, the long-term vision. That would be, and then those lands would be freed up for, as you know, that we had some pretty exciting plans, right, for that property. If in fact we could have see the campus care vision dream come true, that Belvedere then would move to join up with Sister Lakeland, right? But that's not in the cards anytime soon, unfortunately.
Thank you. Councilor Wolaski.
Thank you, your worship. And as you're aware, I represent the town on the board as well with Belvedere. And really all I can do is echo what Councilor Borneman said, the guidance that the pair of presenters give us at the meetings is second to none. And Councilor Williams, she comes back with data that we wouldn't get because you were there when it was a hotel or a motel, whatever it was, and it's good to listen to how it goes. I just like to echo what Councilor Borneman said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? No. Thank you very much for your presentation, and hopefully there were enough people tuned in tonight that either have seen it tonight or we'll look at it later. So thank you very much for presentation. Okay, I've moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor McCann, that the council for the town of Parry Sound approves the stage 2 application to the NOHFC for the Bay Street Wharf repairs in the funding amount of $500,000, and further that council confirms commitment to cover the town's contribution towards the project in the amount of $218,750, which will come from capital reserve fund. The town will cover any project cost overruns should they occur. Questions? I guess my one is DFO contributing anything on this one?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a housekeeping issue to a certain extent because we had this before you once already. Prior to submission, Dustin Turner and I were reviewing the application once more, and he felt that there was a need to include an additional contingency. It would do a couple things. It would, you know, in case there were overruns, it would help cover some of that at the 75% funding from the NOHFC, as well as it would max out the contribution from NOHFC to the $500,000 mark. He didn't see any risks in making the changes to the application. He was very supportive of it. So this is back to you for that reason and that reason alone. With regards to your question, DFO was quite clear when they provided us with the condition report that they would not be funding priority 2 repairs, which were very specific to allowing for the cruise ships to come in. DFO's mandate, and they're quite upfront with this, is commercial fishing. And they're happy to fund improvements if they were supporting the commercial fishing industry. But tourism or the cruise ships is not in their mandate. And they are planning on doing the priority 1 repairs, which is safety related. I have not got final confirmation yet, but the preliminary reports they've told me is that they will be doing that this late winter prior to next season. And so that's their commitment to the town wharf. Anything to do with improvements that are going to allow for the cruise ships are something that they have advised us we need to deal with.
You have to give all those passengers a fishing rod, and when they're coming in, then, you know. Okay, anything further on this? All in favor of that? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor McCann. The council approves the purchase of 2 ambulances from Crestline in the amount of $257,775 plus HST. Each is a sole source purchase, and that the purchases be funded through the EMS equipment reserve account. Discussion? Councillor Keith?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Thompson. I was just wondering about the ambulance that would contain 2 stretchers. I'm just wondering, statistically, how often would that probably be used in a year? Because I understand the idea, but I'm wondering.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, it would be relatively seldomly that the option is utilized. It does cost us some extra in the purchase of the ambulance. The potential with our vast geography and the fact that we have the 2 highway corridors running through the district of Parry Sound have led the manager and myself to believe that it is still a worthy investment to have the option, if there are car accidents, instead of having to wait for another ambulance to come up, to be able to take 2 patients. It has to be a very specific circumstance where you can do it and where it will work. And does it happen? Yes. I wouldn't be able to tell you an exact number in a year. It is seldom. We believe it's quite beneficial when it does happen. We've often talked about only having half of the fleet as double stretchers. Invariably, we've been in the situation before where we've bought 4-wheel drive ambulances and they're never in the right spot when you need them. So currently, we're still recommending moving with the whole fleet being double stretchers. This option may be taken away from us in the near future. We're hearing rumblings that there are so few services that are actually purchasing double stretcher ambulances anymore that they may cease building them and providing them to us as options. So we may be forced into a move away from the double stretchers in the near future.
Yep.
So my follow-up is, this is actually a proactive and safety also sort of approach for the health of citizens.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be the main reason we're doing this, is because we believe that when the situation does arise, we can provide much better service and provide much better care to the people we need to provide that care to on the highways.
Any other questions? No? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I think I remember back when we first started into this, that an ambulance was under $100,000. Pretty crazy. Moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor McCann. The council accepts the 2023 annual report from the building department as attached in Schedule A for information purposes. Any discussion? Councillor Borneman?
We don't often have aren't often blessed by Mr. Vandermeer's presence, so maybe he should give us the Coles Notes version of what's in your, give the public the Coles Vulture.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Borneman, for your question. This is a information report based on the operation and the numbers that the building department had for the year of 2023 with the assistance of Ms. Phillips. She was able to provide us with the attached schedule to identify where we're at as far as revenues and expenses. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vandermeer. I do have one question, and it's just more of a hypothetical. It seemed that in 2023, there were larger projects that were to happen, but for whatever reason, they didn't occur. So that explains a little bit of the deficit here. And I'm just wondering, from your viewpoint, is there anything that jumps out to you that says, hey, would there have been some other enticement that would be helpful in the future so that those people who are saying they have a project and we want to get on with it? Is there anything that you feel that can be done more?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think from a legislative standpoint for building operations, there's not a lot that can be presented as incentives to get building any quicker. But I do feel that over the past year and a half, there have been strides from the provincial government through the Planning Act to increase the speed and cut red tape and things like that, as far as developers being able to obtain their approvals faster and get things moving a bit quicker.
Any further? Councilor Borneman?
Did those same changes, that we're talking basically here about single family homes, did those same changes apply to multi-residential developments and commercial developments, Mr. Vandermeer, or is there a different set of red tape to be dealt with respect to those issues?
Right. I think it would depend on the size of the development, absolutely. When it comes to some of the Planning Act changes, for instance, the requirement for site plan control, expanding from 3 or 4 dwelling units per property to 10, when you're talking about not necessarily single family dwelling units, but dwelling units as a whole, that was definitely impactful, something that we've been able to tell developers about and that they're taking advantage of over the past year or so. So definitely there are things that I find that most developers are trying to stay within the confines of the building, sort of the zoning bylaw. So there's not a multitude of planning processes where people are trying to get rezonings and variances, but they do happen on occasion.
Okay. Anything else? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Ashford, your microphone's still on. Just in case we get some feedback. Moved by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor Borneman, that council approved the 2024 third quarter progress report on the town's key performance objectives, otherwise known as KPOs, as set out in Schedule A. Mr. Harris?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could speak to item 931, the KPOs, and as well item 932, which is increase in the housing supply in Parry Sound, because those two items are related. Increasing the housing supply in Parry Sound is certainly important to everybody, and so important is one of council's strategic priorities. And there's been work done at the council level to put measures in place to increase the housing supply. Council will recall that we made accessory uses and auxiliary uses And as of right, from a zoning perspective across the town, that's increased the secondary suites. They're the quickest and easiest and cheapest combination to create. And so in the second report, 9.3.2, I dove into the statistics a little bit deeper, and was pleased to find that over the last 4 years, 213 new housing units have either been constructed or under construction. These aren't in the planning phase; they're in the either delivered or in the delivery phase, and that's 213 units in a community of our size. I think is quite significant. What's interesting to note that 74 or 35% of those units are rental units. So they're not all expensive condos on the waterfront. There's rental units being created. 17 are those accessory dwelling units that I referred to. So council's policies are having an effect in the housing stock. So the variety of housing stock, there's apartments, accessory dwelling units, single family homes, semis and townhomes. So we've got an increase in units across the board. And I think that's good. In speaking with Mr. Rand, we have 8 applications in for additional housing units, and they total 218 units. So those applications are in the planning phase, and at different points they'll be coming online, but sort of in the works, in the hopper, there's another 218 units, which again bodes very well for a community of our size. Happy to answer any questions on the housing report or any specific questions that council may have on the KPO report.
Councilor McCann?
So I was just wondering then, with the implementation of development charges, is that helping our own bank account with revenues then as we move forward?
Through the mayor to Councilor McCann, there's development charges, and then there's fees and charges. Development charges are we've consciously differentiated collecting for roads, parks, sidewalks, libraries, etc. under development charges. And we made a conscious decision to collect under fees and charges for water and wastewater. The reason for that, there are many exemptions and deferrals and lots of reasons at the end of the day that developers wouldn't have to pay. A case in point, we introduced development charges in 2023. So 2023, 2022. Yeah, time flies. We've not collected any development charges. So if we had put water and wastewater under development charges, we wouldn't have collected any monies for those services. But because we put it under water and wastewater under fees and charges, we've collected approximately $800,000 roughly. And so that's $800,000 that the ratepayers would have had to come up with versus the developers.
So,
Councilor McCann?
it's not me. Let's learn to throw my voice. I'm stealing this idea or model from someone or somewhere, but in moving forward with fighting the housing crisis and finding some creative means to get affordable housing built, or assisted housing, there was the idea that when developers are building, that some of those development charges, or maybe cash paid in lieu of parking, could go into some sort of a fund that would contribute towards the development of affordable housing. Have you heard of that concept before? And is that something that's worth looking at as we move towards fighting this ongoing battle of housing?
Through the mayor, there's a couple of comments. Development charges and the mechanism that's under which we collect, there are a lot of exemptions, some of them for affordable housing. So some of those cost saving measures for the developer are built into the legislation. for development charges. If we, I think through the update of the official plan and subsequently the comprehensive zoning bylaw, there's been comments made to date that maybe we should be requesting developers have a certain number of units in their building for affordable housing. So those things are all being considered and discussed as part of those various planning exercises. I will say though that because the town has most of our infrastructures in place, we're not having to build new roads. Our development charges, even though we have them, they're not as extensive and costly as they are in other communities because we're able to leverage the roads that exist, the parks that exist, the sidewalks that exist, the water system that exists. Our biggest expense going forward to support growth is our wastewater treatment services. That's the bulk of where we're going to have to be spending money, but we're able to leverage the existing infrastructures for infill development and keep the cost of development down. It's still not cheap, but and the town can only control certain things. But because we're doing infill, those costs are kept down.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No? All in favor then? And that's carried. Thank you. Now that was on the KPOs. Next is moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor McCann, that the report entitled Increasing the Supply of Housing be received for information purposes. We need to discuss this one anymore, or are we good? All in favor then? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Ashford, whereas public access to the waterfront has always been important to the residents of Parry Sound and visitors to the area. Whereas the portions of the Shore Road allowance owned by the town have always been of strategic importance to the town of Parry Sound and its ratepayers. Whereas the town owns portions of the Shore Road allowance along the waterfront, and whereas the Shore Road allowance is historically significant to Parry Sound as it was created to support logging and the transportation of goods along the waterways. Whereas physical activity is essential to the mental and physical well-being of all individuals, whereas access to trails along the waterfront supports health and well-being, whereas the Shore Road allowance is a tourism attraction, which is a driver of economic activity in Parry Sound, and whereas Town Council is supportive of Shore Road allowance remaining in public ownership. Now therefore be resolved, the council reaffirms its intent that the town's Shore Road allowances remain in public ownership and that the surplus land bylaw be amended to make reference to this resolution. Any discussion? Councillor Borneman?
I circulated a request one day last week, I forget which, asking that there be a map attached to this. I don't want there to be any confusion or controversy 3 years from now, what we were talking about here tonight. So I'm going to ask that this be deferred and that the staff provide us with a map to attach to this to, you know, clearly document what we're talking about tonight.
Can the map come later and we look at it and approve the map to be attached to this and approve this tonight?
I'm not the rules of order lady. Rebecca,
No, I'm just, I mean, would you be okay with that?
that process.
Ms. Johnson?
The request is that the map be come forward at a later date to be approved separately. It can be.
Okay, and then attached to.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. The reason because this is a good resolution and there's all kinds of chatter on Facebook, which really, I don't go on Facebook anymore. And I'm generally the public, I'll be very clear about that because there's so much misinformation on there that is absolutely shameful. And this resolution confirms council's commitment to Shore Road allowances and the public access. And what I'm hearing is absolutely people making stuff up or whatever that is, to me, it's sinful because they're not listening, they're not paying attention, and they're just promoting some type of their own agenda for misinformation. And so this confirms council's position. And it also, and then the map, when it comes along afterwards, we can put that in there as well. So all of this chatter that people like to promote can just stop as far as I'm concerned. But I know it won't, because some people just have nothing better to do than go on Facebook and put out misinformation. So anyway, that's my little rant for tonight. Councillor Borneman.
At the risk of setting you off further. Is there a date anticipated that this would be done? Just here, let me check. Okay, just so as we're all clear and above board that that this will be done as of a certain date. I'd suggest the first meeting in December. That gives lots of time. I don't think that there's any urgency to this. I just, yes.
I wrote a letter to the editor a couple of years ago about what you were talking about, Mr. Mayor, and I think human nature is we assume things, and assumption sort of carries on from one generation to another, and things get taken for granted, and then people are surprised when they find out, oh no, this is private property, or this is public, or whatnot. So I am glad that we're doing this tonight, but it's always good to know the facts.
Actually, I didn't have mine on either, so. Anyway, all in favor of this resolution? That's carried, none opposed. Moved by Councillor Keith, second by Councillor Ashford, whereas council approved long-term borrowing for the West Parry Sound Recreation and Culture Center with 2023 capital budget on April 4th, 2023, prior to the commencement of construction of the West Parry Sound Recreation and Cultural Center. And whereas the West Parry Sound Recreation and Cultural Center Joint Municipal Services Board does not currently have authority to borrow on a long-term basis. And whereas the project fundraising of $5 million towards the project budget is uncertain. Therefore, council wishes to reconfirm the town's authorization for borrowing a long-term basis through the issue of debentures in the amount of up to the town's proportionate share of the updated authorized budget expenditures of $36,373,842 for the West Parry Sound Recreation and Culture Center as reinstated, effective as of its original approval date of April 4th, 2023. Anybody want to give just in case the public doesn't, Ms. Phillips?
Sure, I'll
Layman's
give
terms.
an update.
Yeah.
Okay, so back in 2022, when the budget came forward, council funded their portion of the $32 million project with debentures. And then that carried forward in 2023. Since then, the estimated budget's been updated to 36 million approximately, so 5 million more than the original. And they're targeting fundraising for that 5 million. So due to municipal act requirements, council has to set their intention to borrow before authorization of the construction and capital expenditures happen. So at this time, if the town wants to preserve the option to borrow in the event that they need to, they would have to see the updated annual repayment limit to make that those regulatory requirements and reconfirm their intention to borrow for any amount that's required for the additional 5 million in the event that that would happen. So to date, the town's original portion has been set aside in reserves, so it removed the need to borrow. But what we're doing right now is preserving the option to borrow in the event that we need to, knowing that right now the Joint Municipal Service Board can't borrow long-term for the project, and to make sure that we have the option to borrow if we need to, and we don't fundraise for that additional 5 million for the town's portion.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, one more fact I just wanted to mention too is by doing this, we can later borrow our portion through Infrastructure Ontario if the town wishes to. So that's one other thing that's an advantage of doing this, is that we may receive the lower interest rate if it's lower at the time. So it leaves that option open.
Okay.
Okay.
Options are good. Yes. Any comments? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Ashford, second by Councillor Boleski, whereas domestic economic abuse is a common but overlooked form of domestic violence that limits an individual's financial autonomy, including denying access and control over resources or constraining economic freedom. Whereas barriers to economic resources undermine a survivor's independence, including the ability to flee abusive relationships. Whereas economic abuse has detrimental effects on a survivor's mental and physical well-being and other social detriments of health. Whereas economic abuse happens across socio-economic status, race, and age, and is exacerbated by intersectional and systemic factors. Whereas economic abuse survivors that have the right to be free from violence and must feel empowered to regain control over their lives. Whereas all levels of government must work to prevent economic abuse, and whereas the town of Parry Sound commits to supporting victim survivors of economic abuse and encourages everyone to inform themselves about signs and impacts of economic abuse. Therefore, the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Parry Sound hereby proclaims November 26th of each year as Economic Abuse Awareness Day in the town of Parry Sound. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Ashford and seconded by Councillor Boleski, whereas the Ontario Deposit Return Program has successfully incentivized the recycling of alcoholic beverage containers, resulting in the removal of over 204,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions. And whereas the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks highlighted in their June 2023 letter that they are considering the adoption of a deposit and return system for non-alcoholic beverages, which presents a unique opportunity to further promote recycling, reduce litter, and encourage sustainable practices among consumers. Therefore, the Council of the Corporation of Town of Parry Sound hereby endorses the expansion of the Ontario Deposit Return Program to include non-alcoholic beverage containers, which will not only enhance environmental stewardship, but will also foster a culture of sustainability within our community, and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, Andrea Kanjan, Minister of Finance, Peter Bethenfalvey, Parry Sound Muskoka MPP, Graydon Smith, and the Town of Bradford West Gwillimbury. And it's Councilor McCann.
Well, I support this. It's a great idea. There was a time when we all drank from pop bottles and received milk at home in the bottles and returned them. I've mentioned often that I'm involved with the fundraising program in which we collect alcoholic containers. My wife and I have been doing this directly for community support services for going on about 2-3 years now, and I can tell you that we've collected about $12,000. So that gives you an idea of the kind of product that's out there. Half of it would have ended up in a landfill site or basically compressed in a recycler. And I think the same thing could be said with pop cans and such. And I've made this suggestion before, and I'll make it here as well too. There is a market in collecting aluminum pop cans, and at one point when we were collecting for the Friends of Belvedere, that was something that they did, and we filled up a huge bin that was donated to us. Its use was by Adams Brothers. You would fill that thing up, and depending on the price of aluminum, when that thing was full, you could make $350 just by selling the aluminum off to whomever. So that's something that if you're trying to raise money for playground equipment or scouts or cadets or whatnot, it is something that you could and should look into. And I would be more than happy to sort of help you steer you through that and how it can be done. Something like this, which puts a value on pop cans, is another incentive for fundraising, if not to at least keep them out of the landfill.
Councilor Keith.
Yes, thank you. I had asked that this be brought to for our agenda tonight, and I had a few reasons for that. And Councillor McCann certainly has made some very good points. I can say myself that many years ago, I worked for a recycling agency, and yes, we gathered up aluminum cans and they were crushed, and certainly we got the money as a result of those deposits. But also why I think this is really important, at least 10 years ago, I was in Scandinavia, and I noticed that sometimes they can be ahead, like anything else, be ahead of us in some areas in respect to the environment. And it was quite common over there. For example, you go into any grocery store, and before you'd actually enter the store, there would be a type of lobby, and you would take your bottle, your can, you would go over to a machine, push it in, and they give you back the money. It encouraged you to bring that items into the store, and then obviously you're going into the grocery store, so you're going to spend the money. So it was a win-win for everybody. Also, over the years since I've been on council, I've helped out at Earth Day and actually did many days of picking up litter. And I can assure you, when I see the number of bottles that aren't alcoholic compared to years ago, there would be a lot of bottles and cans that were alcoholic. Now there is very few of that, but there is many plastic bottles and cans. And I think that this is a way to get people again more interested in conserving and the environment. And frankly, as times get tougher, any little money in your pocket starts to become even more important. So whatever the incentive is, I think this is a really great way of bringing it forward to the government to see if this can happen, because it just makes sense to me.
Councilor Bornman.
Halifax has a fully instituted. You're the culprit. Halifax has a fully instituted recycling program for plastics and glass. And the last time I was out there, I read that I think it was 300,000 kilos or something. They were resurfacing one of the major arteries and they were firing plastic bags into the asphalt mix that had come out of a landfill site. So, you know, where there's a will, there's a way.
Mr. Kearns.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to offer a little bit more information on this topic. This summer, there was a working group established in 2023 to look at this provincially by the then Minister of Environment. I think it was back in around July 23. They established a working group. They were advancing with industry reps and various representatives of affected agencies and that sort of thing. So unfortunately, this summer, all of a sudden, from what I understand, the working group was notified they were being dissolved and that the provincial government decided it was going to be too costly to institute a system like this. And just for a little bit more background information, there are only two provinces in Canada that don't do this right now, Ontario and Manitoba. So it has been instituted. I just wanted to offer that as a little bit more background information. The province was looking at it and suddenly this summer dissolved the working group and there was some information, I guess, provided at that time that said it was going to be too costly. They weren't going to look at it any further, just all of a sudden. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that that was offered to council as well.
Good. Okay. Councillor Borneman, then Councillor Keith.
Has AMO taken a position on this, Mr. Mayor? Have they come down with any decree, or are we starting to write more letters asking that the province, you know, relook at this?
I'm not 100% sure on that one. I know that, you know, we were certainly, AMO was huge in supporting the, you know, the suppliers of all the goods paying, you know, for the collection and that sort of thing. So that like through the Blue Box program and that sort of thing, which it's working that way now. Okay, but I think this is kind of a, I mean, I think they're aware of it, but I couldn't tell you whether they're actually promoting this right at the moment. So this part of it, something I can find out, but yeah. Councillor Keith.
Yes, well, first of all, yes, Mr. Mayor, I think that would be great if you can find that out. But in addition, I think we've already seen through the news over the years, because the Ontario government has decided something at one point in time, doesn't mean that it won't change. We just think of the green belt issue. All it amounts to is a lot of pressure for change, and suddenly things happen.
Yep, that's true. I mean, I think we can add AMO to the list on this here, as well as Phenom, I think, as well. They're certainly in we're part of their catchment area, so I think if we can add them to this here and make sure they get copies, I think it's fair enough, because I know Mac Bain, you know, was one of the people leading the charge on the, you know, the producer responsibility in this whole process or whatever of, you know, the Blue Box program, recyclables and that sort of thing. And Mac's their executive director now, so for Phenom. So any information we can feed them and that sort of thing is a good thing. You got that, right? You got that. Okay. Anything further on this item? All in favor then? And that's carried. Oh, that goes. Oh, okay. All right. And that too. Oh, it all came apart then. Here. Okay, perfect. Moved by Councillor Balesky, second by Councillor Ashford, the Council of the Corporation Town of Parry Sound hereby supports the Federation of Ontario Northern Municipalities, otherwise known as FONOM's resolution as attached, calling for the implementation of the Ontario Forest Industries Association 2025 Ontario budget recommendations in support of attracting investment and maintaining forest operations and employment in Ontario. That this resolution be sent to the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, Vic Fideli, Minister of Natural Resources, Graydon Smith, Associate Minister of Forestry and Forest Products, Kevin Holland, Minister of Environment and Conservation and Parks, Andrea Kanjan, Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, Todd McCarthy, Minister of Mines, George Parry, Minister of Energy and Electrification, Stephen Lecce, Associate Minister of Energy Intensive Industries, Sam Osterhof, Minister of Finance, Peter Bethenfalvey, leaders of the opposition parties, Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, Rural Ontario Municipal Association, Roma, and Ontario Forest Industries Association, the OFIA. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Pulaski, second by Councillor Ashford, that the Council of the Corporation of Town of Parry Sound hereby supports the request of the municipality of McDougall as identified in its resolution 2024-106 to be granted authorization to enforce provisions of the Building Code Act and Part 8 sewage systems, part of the Ontario Building Code, and that the authority be removed from the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority, and that a copy of this resolution be sent to Paul Calandra, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Graydon Smith, MPP, Parry Sound, Muskoka, and the municipality of McDougall. Any discussion? Councillor Ashford?
I think it was serendipitous that we discussed our housing goals this council meeting, because this is a resolution that is kind of the same thing for McDougall, that we do not have the same kind of obligations or a need to work with the Conservation Authority because we have water, wastewater, and they're looking to increase their speed that they can do approvals and all those different kinds of things. So for that reason, I think we should support them in their endeavor. I'm also cognizant that the Conservation Authority probably operates, on a certain economy of scale. So I think there's something we've got to think about as that as well. So I don't have my heart set on it, but I do think if anyone else has any other ideas or comments about it, but I do think that this is something that will give kind of shows that both us and McDougall are both on the same page, that we want to try to get housing for our residents in our community.
Councillor Borneman?
Well, I'm agreeing with Councillor Ashford on this one. I'm told by people who are in the business that approvals from North Bay Conservation Authority or the MOE can take upwards of a year for septic systems. And in a province where housing is a high priority, to get approval for what is pretty basic technology is seems a little beyond the pale. I commend McDougall for wanting to take this on, and the expense that's associated with this. I think that this will be they won't be the last application that we see, or the last request for support that we'll see for things like this.
Anything further? All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Bolesky and seconded by Councillor Ashford, whereas municipalities face growing infrastructure needs, including roads, bridges, public transit, water systems, and other critical services, which are essential to community well-being and economic development. And whereas the current sources of municipal revenue, including property taxes and user fees, are insufficient to meet these increasing demands for infrastructure investment, and whereas the province of Ontario currently collects the land transfer tax LTT on property taxations and municipalities across the province, generating significant revenue that's not directly shared with the municipalities. And whereas the federal government collects the goods and services tax, GST, on property transactions, a portion of which could be directed to municipalities to address local infrastructure needs. And whereas redistributing the portion of the provincial land transfer tax and GST to municipalities would provide a predictable and sustainable source of funding for local infrastructure projects without creating a new tax burden on residents or home buyers. And whereas a redistribution of a portion of the existing land transfer tax and GST would allow municipalities to better plan and invest in long-term infrastructure initiatives, supporting local economic growth and improving the quality of life for residents. One, now therefore it hereby resolved, the Town of Parry Sound Council formally requests the provincial government to consider redistributing a portion of the land transfer tax collected on property transactions to municipalities. And two, be it further resolved, the Town of Parry Sound Council calls on the federal government to allocate a percentage of GST collection on property sales to municipalities. Three, further be resolved that this redistribution of the land transfer tax at GST should be structured to provide predictable and sustainable funding to municipalities, allowing for better long-term planning and investment in infrastructure projects that benefit local communities, thus ensuring that local governments receive a fair share of the revenue to address critical infrastructure needs. And further be resolved, the copies of this resolution be forwarded to the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, Premier Doug Ford, the Ontario Minister of Finance, and Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, MP Scott Aitchison, MPP Graydon Smith, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, for their endorsement and advocacy. And I can add to this one that AMO did try this back in 2016 and 2017 worked it all through, and that, you know, even 1% of the sales tax would provide municipalities with a lot of money, and that time that it was wanted to be directed toward infrastructure. And because we have a huge infrastructure deficit, not only in Ontario, but across this province, across the country. And it was a flat no from everybody involved. So it really doesn't hurt to get this out again and put it in their face, because municipalities need something, and we're not getting it. Councilor Bornemann, I think, had his hand up first.
Well, I didn't write the letter that we received from MP Aitchison that was on the correspondence list tonight, but I was glad that it was there, because in that letter, he acknowledges that all levels of government need to do more, and that you know, he was making promises that the next federal government would look at things rather differently. So I hope that this is one of the things that might be on his to-do list, because it seems, you know, we all know the answers, that we need housing and we need more infrastructure money in order to provide more housing. And without that, the status quo will be maintained. So I hope that both at Queen's Park and in Ottawa, they readjust their sites in order to allow us. Mr. Harris indicated that, I think he said 218 units approved that haven't been built. Not all of those units will be built without additions or enhancements to our infrastructure system. So hopefully that they're getting the message.
Somehow there's some sort of feedback between the two microphones because all the other microphones are fine. It's really, really strange. No, it's okay. No, it's fine. So who had their hand up next? Councilor McCann?
So Premier Ford, who is on this kick to build more homes faster, this could certainly be some incentive for, for this sort of thing. I've never transferred land before, so someone educate me on what involves. So if you're building a new home or buying an old home, is there HST on that? And where is that over and above land transfer tax? How does that all work?
Can you repeat that question again, please?
Okay, so I've never transferred land before, and I'm really not sure how this works. So first of all, first question, if you buy a new home, are you paying HST on it? If you're buying or building your first home or whatever.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's a bit of a complicated question because it depends what type of home it is, or if you're a business, or if it's your primary home. So typically that's reviewed on an individual basis, but depending on what type of property it is. And
well, maybe so maybe I'll come at you this way then. So what is the land transfer tax? Is that over and above HST? That's really my question.
it's separate from HST.
Typically, what percentage is it? Sorry.
I do believe it's a tiered percentage, so
There you go.
it's not that easy to
Okay.
say the exact amount. I mean, I can look into that and let you know.
Well, I'm just curious.
I think you can Google it too. Anyway, any other questions on this?
Councillor Ashford might be an expert on this.
Well, maybe. Yeah. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. These are all long-winded resolutions tonight. Holy smokes. Moved by Councillor Ashford and seconded by Councillor Bielanski, whereas the Office of the Chief Medical Officer of Health and the Ministry of Health are undertaking review of the funding approach for local public health agencies. And whereas many factors such as the geography, dispersed population, and less robust infrastructure and service availability in Northern Ontario drive up the cost of delivering public health services. And whereas residents of Northern Ontario in general have poorer health outcomes compared to their southern counterparts, including more than 50% higher average of mortality rate and a 300% higher rate of opioid-related deaths. And whereas the perspectives of the Northern Ontario and Public Health Funding Review letter outlines many of the equity considerations related to the funding approach for local public health agencies in Northern Ontario. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Council of the Corporation of Town of Parry Sound joins the Medical Officer of Health for the 7 Northern Ontario local public health agencies, as well as the North Bay Parry Sound District Health Unit, in endorsing the aforementioned and attached letter. And furthermore, be it resolved that the copies of this resolution be sent to the Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Carrie Moore, the Ontario Minister of Health, Sylvia Jones, Executive Lead Office of the Chief Medical Officer of Health, Elizabeth Walker, Boards of Health of Ontario, Nipissing MPP, Vic Fideli, Parry Sound Muskoka MPP, Graydon Smith, Timiskaming Cochrane MPP, John Van Thoff, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and the District of Parry Sound Municipal Association. This came at our Board of Health meeting, and I got them to make sure that it's going out to all these different agencies as well, because the advocacy in this is huge. Again, it's, people in an office in Southern Ontario don't understand what Northern Ontario is really like. So, it's funding should be a little bit different considering the landscape and where we're looking at. You have health units in Southern Ontario that are small, and you've got them in Northern Ontario that are, 2-day drive. That's right. Yeah. So, any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor Borneman, whereas official statistics from the Government of Ontario confirm that rural roads are inherently more dangerous than others, and whereas despite having 17% of the population, 55% of the road fatalities occur on rural roads. And whereas rural, northern, and remote municipalities are fiscally strained by maintaining extensive road networks on a smaller tax base. And whereas preventing crashes reduces the burden on Ontario's already strained healthcare system. And whereas roadway collisions and associated lawsuits are significant factors in runaway municipal insurance premiums, and preventing crashes can have a significant impact on improving municipal risk profiles. Therefore, be it resolved that the town of Parry Sound requests that the Government of Ontario take action to implement the rural road safety program, and that Good Roads has committed to lead, allowing Ontario's rural municipalities to make the critical investments needed to reduce the high number of people being killed and seriously injured on Ontario rural roads. And further, that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Premier Doug Ford, Honorable Prambeet Sakira, Minister of Transportation, Honorable Kinga Surma, Minister of Infrastructure, Honorable Rob Flack, Minister of Agriculture, Honorable Lisa Thompson, Minister of Rural Affairs, Honorable Trevor Jones, Associate Minister of Emergency Preparedness and Response, the Honorable Sylvia Jones, Minister of Health, and the Ontario Good Roads Association. We should also add Phenom in there as well, please, because I know they have been all over this. And further, that this resolution be circulated to all municipalities in Ontario requesting their support. Any discussion? There's quite a theme tonight. We need to make sure that the provincial and federal governments are stepping up to provide more money for municipalities to make them safe, to provide more housing and better infrastructure. And I could go on another rant if you wanted tonight too about this whole $200 giveaway that I tell you, people are saying, what the heck? When that could go into infrastructure, could go into healthcare, could go into all these things that we're talking about. $3 billion, So anyway, I won't. But maybe I just did. All in favor? And that's carried. Moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Ashford that bylaw number 2024-7451 being a bylaw to authorize the renewal of an agreement with Four Sports Incorporated for operation of a pro shop at the Bobby Orr Community Center for a 3-year term be considered as read a first time. All in favor? Carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Ashford that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? No. All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Counselor Borneman, second by Counselor McCann, that bylaw number 2024-7452 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a memorandum of understanding the Carling Trail Blazers for the prescribed use of the fitness trail as a snowmobile trail be considered as read a first time. All in favor? And that's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Counselor McCann, second by Counselor Borneman, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time passed, signed and sealed. Any discussion? Counselor Borneman, McCann, and then Ashford.
This question is for Mr. Cairns, and it's obviously, what is the status of the trestle? Do we have the engineering reports? There's been quite a bit of digging done down there. Is it safe for the groomer to function on that structure as it sits currently?
Through your worship, to date, we don't have the official document. We did speak to the engineering firm. They've completed the inspection on that particular structure. They haven't finalized the report because the report comes back as a complete report on all of our structures. The indications were that they did not have concerns for the groomer using that structure this winter.
Well, actually, I had the same thing in mind in terms of whether or not it was safe for the snowmobiles, or where they would have to sort of take that little detour around. But then I forgot about the groomers there. They're a little heavier than the snow machines. So we're okay then at this point in time. I'm sorry, do we have, maybe I'm putting on the spot here, in terms of getting a final word on that? Do we have an expected time of arrival for a report on that?
Through your worship, in discussions with the engineers, it won't be until late this year or early next year for the final complete report on all of the structures.
So it looks like the status quo is in place for a while.
They did, as I mentioned, they did indicate that they did not have concerns with the groomer and snowmobiles using that structure as part of the trail system this winter.
Counselor Ashford.
I was wondering about the timing, how long and other concerns, and I, related to the bridge, that I never imagined we would be in a position where the bridge might not support the groomer. And there's perhaps other things that could come up over time with this. And just as anecdotally, there's 4 or 5 ratepayers that seem to contact me every time there's a particularly bad ice, and note that the town does not de-ice the fitness trail, and I must remind them that it is the snowmobile trail at that time, and they're not satisfied by that. So, things can come up as time goes on. Is this agreement, what would happen, say, for example, if we couldn't, for some reason, going forward, we had to say, no, something's happened, a bridge, anything, we got to stop, you can't use the trail tomorrow. Like, how does this agreement work with the snowmobile clubs?
Through your worship, I would suggest that if an emergency situation came up and a structure was unsafe for use, the immediate discontinuance of it as a trail would just be communicated to the group. I do know the Rose Point Trail has had closures this summer that were, some were anticipated, I think some were unanticipated. So same idea, that they would restrict the use for certain motorized modes of transportation if it was unsafe to do so. The agreement is allowing it's essentially renewing the existing agreement, and the Ontario Federation of Snowmobile Clubs has indicated to all of their member clubs that they need new agreements on all the landowner use for all of the trails. And I understand this has been a very large and onerous project for many of the clubs.
So is there an end date with this? Just because are we signing on for 20 years? Like, what are we signing on for? it just kind of says it starts and doesn't have an end.
Through your worship, so the old agreement did not have an end date written into it. We can certainly do that with this agreement if there's some anticipation that that something might change. I just remind council that it is the link for the park to park trail through town. And it just kind of an aside going forward, we are running a pilot project this winter to quantify the amount of traffic on the trail, including snowmobiles. So we have a company that is able to provide us with some technology on a trial basis to quantify the number of snowmobile trips through town, which should be some beneficial data for a lot of the businesses and for the town to work with as well.
Councillor Keith?
Yes, thank you. Well, I would like to add that this be just for the year, like till October of 2025, the date. I think that we should keep in mind that there are some moving parts here. We don't know what's really going to happen with this trestle for sure. Also, there was the survey for the waterfront recreation master plan, and I think we should keep that in mind. I think the snowmobiling certainly is something that we value, but I think we should get more information. So I think that just renewing it for a year and having this come back next year where we will be able to have more fulsome information would be the best way to handle this.
Councillor Ashford?
That was a little shorter than what I was thinking. But I was thinking if we have terms on signs, we should definitely have terms on something with the business trail that ties it up. So I don't know if there's another type of out aside from an end date that we would need to say at some point. If we needed to say at some point, or the feedback from the master plan says that we have to change something, like if we realize that, like a year does sort of make sense given the time frame of the waterfront master plan.
Well, hey. Just remember, this is part of the park to park trail, which means in the wintertime, it's part of that park to park trail. So what do you want?
Well, I'm still moving that it would be a year date. We come back in another year and discuss it further then. That way we've got more information and we can come up with a more solid plan because we'll have a good, better understanding of, for example, the trestle. Is it possible some of that trail is going to be changed? And as indicated, we'll have more information with that recreation master plan. So I think it would be a way of us not locking in. I realize the importance of this trail, but I think we need to have a little bit more information.
Mr. Kearns and then Councillor Boleski.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to point out that the memorandum of understanding does contain a clause that it can be terminated in 60 days notice. So it only requires 2 months notice. If it may be contributing to some uncertainty, workload from the OFSC, and these are volunteers on the local snowmobile clubs. I'd just like to mention that too, because they are doing this for their love of the sport and for community and all those sorts of things. So they do put a lot of work into this. And this can be changed. You can terminate within 2 months, which is a pretty short time frame for something of this magnitude.
That's good. Councillor Boleski.
Thank you, Your Worship. That was basically my take on it. It doesn't give a good optic. The snowmobile is the snowmobile trail is very, very important to this area. There's a lot of snowmobiles run it. There was just a bridge just had a new surface put on it by volunteers here, not last weekend, the weekend before. As the director says, there's a 60-day clause in it. I think we should leave it as written, and we can always cancel it down if need be. Thank you.
Councilor McCann?
I know at some point we did talk about detouring with the snowmobiling season. They could detour around the trestle if it was shut down around the and where Sail Perry Sound is. But there is some concern about how the groomer would get from one side to the other. Has any discussion, because I know that this was an idea that was going to be talked about if this was the case, or, can the trail be groomed from the other direction as well? I know the logistics are a little tricky there, but you could still at least have some open access, I guess.
Mr. Kearns?
Through your worship, I would offer that from staff's perspective, I think it was clear that council had indicated that a level crossing, the removal of the trestle, was not a desired outcome. Now we're awaiting the report to come back to give us the indication of what's existing, perhaps what options are available. So from a staff perspective, we were not considering a detour of the snowmobile trail. We had envisioned the trail would remain as it is currently. We were awaiting that confirmation from the engineering firm that there weren't any concerns with carrying the weight of snowmobiles and groomer across that this year in its current condition. So the indication is that that's not a concern currently. Detouring through Sail Perry Sound would be very, very difficult. I would offer there is an awful lot of bedrock through that area. And moving the snowmobile traffic would be a bit of a logistical nightmare for everyone involved. So there was no anticipation that anything would change this year. As I said, we were waiting for that word from the engineering firm, and we did receive that verbally, at least, that there weren't concerns for the trestles or the bridge's ability to convey snowmobile and groomer traffic this winter. So having said that, depending on the outcome, we'll be back to council again with condition reports once we receive the actual OSIM report. And that gives us a fair bit of time to work on options to deal with mitigations, whatever the outcome of that report is prior to snowmobile season occurring in 2025, starting in 2025.
Thank you.
Councilor Velasco.
Thank you, Your Worship. In all reality, if you look at the agreement the way it is now, we're limited to a 60-day agreement because we can get out of it in 60 days. So it could be 10 or 15 years from now, it's still a 60-day out. So if you do it for a year, are you going to take the 60-day portion out of it out, or are you going to leave it in? Like I can't see why. And we'd be the only municipality that's saying to the snowmobile clubs, we're not too sure we're going to let you use it next year. It's not a good optic at all. So I would suggest we leave it as it is, where we've got a 60-day out if there's a problem. And if the trestle becomes a problem, then they understand that they can't use it. They don't want to use something that's not right. So I suggest we leave it as is.
Anything further? No? All in favor then? Any opposed? One opposed. Carried. Moved by Councilor McCann, second by Councilor Borneman, that bylaw number 2024-7453 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? And that's carried. Moved by Counselor Borneman and seconded by Counselor McCann that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. All in favor? That's carried. So prior to adjourning, I'd like to offer the following information to the public regarding the next council meeting. The next meeting of council for the town of Parry Sound is scheduled for Tuesday, November the 19th, 2024 at 7 p.m. The meeting will be held in the town of Parry Sound Council Chambers at 52 Seguin Street, entrance via Gibson Street. Be live streamed and recorded. All regular council meetings are held at 7 p.m. on the first and third Tuesday of each month, except January and August, where only one regular meeting is scheduled. Council meeting schedule, notices of special council meetings, complete agendas and minutes, and instructions on accessing live streamed and recorded council meetings are all posted on the town's website. Go to www.parrysound.ca and use the search bar. Your TV airs council meetings on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. following a regular council meeting. And for Cogeco listings, contact www.yourtv.tv. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.